and welcome to another episode of the Cables to Clouds Fortnightly News. And as always, I'm Tim McConaughey at Juan Golbez on Twitter. I went back to Twitter. I'm still on Blue Sky as well, but yeah. And with me, as always, is my co-host Chris Miles, who you're at BGV Main on both, right?
On both. Yeah, I don't. Are we going back now? Is that what we have to do?
Well, yeah, I've been going back and forth, and honestly, it's still got problems. Lots of them. I feel like every other post is a bot post or a OnlyFans something or other. Like, I don't know if that's the algorithm or whatever, but yeah, it still feels like that. But
it seems like every single tweet I see now, the first reply is asking Grok if it's real. That's all I see.
That's the other one. Every reply, at Grok, is this a real thing? Or at Grok, what movie is this? Or at Grok, whatever. Like, I was like, geez, this is literally dead internet theory. Like, given, yeah. Anyway, not to make this episode about that, but yeah. Anyway, so let's jump right into the news. So the big news that happened really recently, actually, just the last couple days, is that HPE and Juniper have been given the go-ahead, HPE has been given the go-ahead by the Department of Justice to acquire Juniper at $40 a share, so about $14 billion. And the big difference or the change that allowed this to move forward are two things. One is that HP or Juniper has to divest itself of the Instant On branch and wireless portfolio, which I'll be honest, I don't even barely remember Instant On. I don't know if it's like a Ubiquity thing or
I think whatnot. It's like a small medium business type thing.
Yeah. So that's a weird one, but okay. But the big one is, so part of the Mist AI Ops technology has to be licensable from Juniper or HPE. I guess HPE now will have to make some of the, and it's not clear how much or what part of the Mist AI Ops stuff has to now be offered as a licensing deal from HPE. So that was the big. So given those two concessions, I guess. So now HPE is able to buy Juniper. And I was telling Chris before we hit record that my financial advisor literally 2 days before this was announced had just told me, hey, let's get out of HPE because this deal is stalled and we can make more money elsewhere. So that's life. That's the stock market for you, and that's life. Yeah, that's interesting. Anything? Oh my God, January 9th, 2024 is when this was originally announced. I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah, the interesting piece. I mean, maybe your financial advisor isn't wrong. Maybe you should wait to see what happens after this mandatory auction of the Mist source code, right? So, like, I think that's the kind of the open item here is that if they go through with this, kind of licensing of the source code, like who knows who's going to be able to get access to it, right? So, I think we kind of went through this a bit in that. The main reason we thought that this was even being acquired by HPE was for the the Mist AI Ops technology, right? That was kind of the meat of it, right? And if that is the part that has to basically be put out to the source code put out to a license, Cisco could buy it, any number of the competitors could buy it. Don't know what to degree they would want to integrate it based on their existing portfolio and their existing AI technology, et cetera. But if I don't know, like it's like on one hand I could see like, oh, this is huge, like that Cisco could buy it and then it would just be a completely level playing field. But I don't think that Cisco would buy this and be able to integrate it at any degree. So it's like, I think the idea is to level the playing field, but it just like no one would go through the effort of that. At least from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. So I think the word bearing all of the weight is limited access.
Yeah.
Limited access. So what does that really mean? What is the limited access? It's probably not the whole source code, right? It's going to be some piece of the technology, but what piece and how much? I think because that's going to answer the question of who would really already. I'm with you. I don't think Cisco's got the what is it, deep network or whatever that they're working on, their own model, which probably is built on Splunk's data.
Right.
So yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't think the big players would probably truly license it for real like reasons, maybe competitive intelligence or something. Yeah, I think the question is how much. How much what does limited really mean in this context?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, and then the other big piece of news was, of course, that AWS Reinforce just finished. Now, honestly I wasn't able to keep up with Reinforce at all this year. I know, Chris, you did quite a bit of watching on the keynotes and all of that. So, you want to tell us a little bit about what happened this year at Reinforce?
Yeah, sure. So, for those that don't know, AWS Reinforce is kind of the much smaller sister event to reInvent, which is really all focused on security, right? So it's basically held. I think it was held in DC. I think it's typically in DC.
Philly this year.
Oh, Philly this year. Okay. But yeah, so I watched a few of the keynotes and I watched some of the sessions as well, just to kind of stay up to date. And there was definitely some themes that I saw coming out from this particular Reinforce, in that they kind of went back to talking about the kind of the traditional stuff about security usually slows down innovation, et cetera. So it needs to be directly integrated and easy to consume, et cetera, not kind of stifle that innovation piece. But then, they also talked about how it's from what they've seen, they being AWS, that, companies with a more kind of mature security practice in place are able to actually adopt generative AI a bit faster than other companies. So, kind of reinforcing the importance on security. If that kind of foundational element is there, then that you should be able to consume AI at a faster pace than typical enterprises or businesses, et cetera. They wanted to reinforce that security should become a competitive advantage and not a cost center. I don't know. I feel like any kind of conference you go to where whatever is the theme, whether it be a networking conference or a security conference, they're going to be like, we need to stop being a cost center. At the end of the day, you're probably still a fucking cost center. I don't think you ever get away from that in the grand scheme of things. But there was some interesting stuff that they talked about in regard to Comcast and, kind of Comcast's, kind of they have this, cybersecurity team with thousands of people, and their AI adoption has, kind of increased a lot of their security findings over the last, I'd say last year, I guess. And apparently they're building tons of AI bots for things like threat modeling. It's contributed to a good deal of their patents that they've published as well, which I thought was quite interesting. And I think they have this kind of like 7-year North Star type strategy to get, everything adopting AI. And that's where the challenge came in of security being this cost center, whereas it should be, kind of used for innovation, et cetera. So it was, I think there was a strong emphasis as well on proactive security rather than reactive security, and leveraging AI obviously to do all that. AI is obviously going to be kind of peppered into everything. So that was kind of my overall rub of the general theme of the conference. So yeah, it was quite interesting.
Yeah. I saw that they put out a whole list of kind of, well, I don't know if it's a whole list, to be honest. I'm not sure if it's exhaustive, but certainly the top new announcements from Reinforce. And going through the list, all I can think of is, there's a lot of third-party CSPM tools that should probably be very nervous about this trend. I mean, this is the thing though. If you are a non-CSP provider of services to CSP customers, you really need to be paying attention to your moat. And by moat, of course, what I mean is that what makes you differentiated from the CSP. I mean moat in like the traditional business sense. Basically, what is the thing you are defending, the IP, the use case, whatever that is that makes your company essentially viable as a company. And I'm saying that with my own self-awareness that I work for a company that also offers kind of third-party services relying on the CSPs, but that's something that's been top of mind, right, for us as well, because the CSPs are going to continue to innovate and to bring new services, and it's going to be based on, in my experience, has been based on two things, right? Who's asking for it, right, and then how much money is involved, which makes perfect sense, right? If you're a CSP or if you're any kind of business, really. I mean, Cisco does the same thing. Like every company that offers something to customers is asking the same questions, right? Who wants it and how much are they willing to pay for it? So anyway, let's go through some of the announcements here, actually, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. Let's see. The first one here is unify your security with AWS Security Hub for risk prioritization and response at scale. And this is a preview feature. This was announced, and this is in preview. But it seems like it's just and we'll have, of course, all the links to the stuff in the show notes. So there's some visuals here, there's some workflows and whatnot that you'll want to go through and take a look at yourself. But the basic idea of the Security Hub seems to be that it is what do they call it? Because there's so many of these. I don't know if it's a CSPM itself, but it's basically a threat correlator analyzer and like surfaces insights from other
my takeaway is that this is kind of like a SOAR.
That's right.
A SOAR mixed with some CSPM capabilities in it as well. It's like you said, it's kind of ingesting kind of these threat discovery things from different services that are running on AWS and kind of correlating all that together and, building this kind of like map for you and offering remediation techniques, etc.
Yeah, it specifically mentions Guard Duty, Inspector, Macy, and AWS Security Hub CSPM. So I don't know if that's what they're calling it, is AWS Security Hub CSPM. But I'm with you. I agree. More of a SOAR, really. Because of the orchestration of all the security, feeds and surfacing of the. So, like I said, take a look at the threat, the visuals that go along with this. Again, we'll have the posts, and you could really get an idea of like what they're talking about when we're talking about like, ingesting the feeds and surfacing the insights and giving you kind of that overall view of your cloud environment, just kind of based on all of those services. So, of course, it also means that the value of this service is going to be based on how many of the other AWS security feed services you are leveraging, right? Like Macy and Inspector. So there is kind of, tongue in cheek there. It's going to be as useful as how much AWS security feeds you're already bringing into it, right?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see, what else did we see announced here? Next up, let's talk about a couple of features that we saw talked about specifically around AWS Network Firewall. So one thing that they also touched on was something that is called, what is it? They always bury the names in these things. You can never actually find what it's called, active threat defense for AWS Network Firewall. So basically, if you can think of kind of the AWS managed rules that you have within AWS Network Firewall, or even something like a WAF, where basically there's common things, the common exploits, et cetera, that are well defined in a rule set that AWS manages, and you just basically invoke that and use it on your traffic. This is kind of the same thing, except typically they call out that customers are commonly looking for third-party threat feeds to know, pull in sources of threat intel, etc. And so this looks like they've enabled that to run with their own threat intelligence system, which is called MadPot. Which I think they've been using for quite a while. I think they started this around 2010 or something like that. So basically, kind of the same thing. You have these active threat feeds that are managed by AWS in conjunction with MadPot, and you have to do things like deep packet inspection, et cetera, on the traffic for this to really take effect. They have something called deep threat inspection built into this as well, which is labeled as collective defense, and it enables shared threat intelligence, improving protection for active threat managed rule group users. So I don't know if that means it's shared. That one kind of confused me. I couldn't really tell if that means it's shared amongst like other organizations, or just like shared in terms that AWS manages. I wasn't really sure about that. I don't think your specific data is going to be shared between rule sets or anything like that. But I think the data, the data that is ingested and learned by the data you push through could potentially be used for another customer, I suppose. I think that's what that comes back to.
I agree. I think it's anonymized. I mean, and I think Cisco's been doing like a lot of other companies have been doing this, right? And not using the data for threat intelligence to like find 0 days and stuff like that, right? So that's not unusual.
And it would make sense because it's an opt-in feature, right? When you enable the service, you literally just check a box that says opted in. So I don't think it's anything more specific than that. Obviously, this comes at a price. Starting out, looks like this is, you're going to pay about half a cent per gigabyte that you use these specific rules. So kind of leaning towards things like IPS, et cetera, in this kind of service with AWS's own threat feed. We talked about this before we hit record, and obviously turning on certain things like this usually impacts performance, but with this being an auto scaled service enabled by things like AWS Hyperplane, etc. I wonder if this really does have any impact on that, especially since they're charging you for it, right? So you can they probably want you to funnel as much as you can through this thing because you're gonna definitely pay the piper at the end of the day, right? So that was a new one that was added. I thought that was pretty cool. Anything to add there, Tim?
Yeah, so it does mention, and as you pointed out, for deep packet inspection to work, obviously this thing sets itself up as a TLS proxy as well, which is where the big we would expect the big performance hit to come. It also mentions at the very end, it's a little bit of a buried lead because it kind of leaves some questions. Another consideration is the mitigation of false positives. When you use this managed rule group in your firewall policy, you can edit the rule group alert settings to help identify false positives as part of a mitigation strategy. And there's a whole thing about mitigating false positives. So remember that this is a threat feed, like a threat intelligence thing. So, depending on what your business is doing and what, maybe your homegrown applications or whatever that be, it's possible, and they point this out, that like, oh, by the way, as you're pushing data through here, you might, whatever you're doing might light this thing up like a Christmas tree and be perfectly safe. But so by the way, at the very end, you might want to do some work on making sure that you know how to mitigate these false positives. So that's it. Otherwise, this is just one more piece. One question I did have that was a little very tongue-in-cheek was I was thinking of the that report from Cyber Ratings earlier.
Yeah, right.
I was like, is this get us an extra % on the on the ratings? I guess we'll see next year what Cyber Ratings has to say.
We'll see if they play nice. Another real quick one that they announced around AWS Network Firewall was the enablement of AWS Transit Gateway native integration, which, on the surface, you'd probably say the AWS Network Firewall is a native service, isn't already natively integrated. But typically when you'd want to deploy AWS Network Firewall, you would have to essentially either you could put it in every single VPC, which a lot of customers do that if they are willing to pay that particular price for it. But what most customers would do is put that into a dedicated security VPC, which kind of hangs off of your TGW and is, either used for all your east-west inspection or north-south inspection, et cetera. This actually removes the need for that, which totally makes sense under the hood. Like, I'm kind of surprised they didn't do this sooner. But basically, you can, as you're creating a network firewall, you can just natively attach it to a TGW. So you're not creating a VPC, you're not creating endpoints, you're not doing all this stuff, you're updating route tables, etc. It's just a native integration, which is really cool, and probably going to be removing quite a bit of complexity, I would imagine, which means that the people that are typically there managing complex stuff have one less job to do, which is not great for us. But it seems to be that's where they're leaning. So I just thought this was kind of a cool feature that they added. I wonder if they'll end up adding this type of integration for third parties, but I highly doubt it because it's AWS, but we shall see. Anything to add there, Tim?
No, that's it. I agree. I mean, it's in the clouds. It's in the CSP's best interest to lower complexity because that's literally the value prop of native, right? So I get it. And I agree with you. This is like way long in the coming. Like, considering the actual work to build an inspection VPC and build the network endpoint or the firewall endpoints and orchestrate the route tables and all that, there was literally no reason AWS couldn't just have, and they did now, right? Make it completely and transparent to the users. So, will this drive adoption? I am interested. Same reason as before. I'm thinking of that cyber ratings report and some other things. At the end of the day, doesn't matter how useful, how easy it is to get traffic to a firewall if it's not effective. But I don't know. Like, we'll see. Like, are people finding that the firewall is effective? That's one thing I still haven't heard. So what I think we'll see is more adoption, and hopefully with more adoption, we'll see more data on how effective AWS Network Firewall, the native integration, is. I think this piece with the TGW is just an ease of use, an uplift for usability, to drive adoption. But I think it's ultimately going to be a good thing.
And we should probably add to this that the announcement specifically calls out that this has no effect on the existing pricing. So it's not more expensive and it's not cheaper, but it does solve some of the complexity under the hood.
All right. Okay, so here's another new one. This is interesting. This is another one in preview, and this one is called AWS Shield. It's funny because it's called AWS Shield. I was looking at this. We were talking about this beforehand. So it's called AWS Shield, or they've now named it officially AWS Shield. But before that, it was either before that or they're still calling it the Network Security Director. So it's actually AWS Shield Network Security Director. It's a preview feature, and it's basically, what would you call it? Like it's like CSPM basically for your network is kind of what it is, right?
To a degree, yeah.
It's made to scan your network deployment in AWS and identify holes, like that you've been permissive or that you have allowed, like maybe your security groups or TGW or something, as mentioned specifically, like, oh, you left your CloudFront distribution connected, open to public and stuff like that. So it goes through your environment, finds network problems, but also maps them. This is the part where the real value comes in. Maps them to kind of known security vulnerabilities, exploits, problems. So think of the thing we just talked about a little while with the security hub, and then make this like it's a little bit like that, but it's specifically focused on all the network implementation stuff. So like WAF, CloudFront, TGW, security groups, all that good stuff. So again, this is another one where we're going to have the links we'll have a link in the show notes, because there's a lot of visuals that are with this to kind of visualize for you what that looks like. What does the security what's the network, the AWS Shield director look like? Because there's a lot of questions that I can't really explain very well in voice. But if you look at the screenshots, it'll kind of answer the questions about like what is the value, what does this do for you, what does this find for you. But so another one where I really feel like they're coming after third party type of things that do this today.
Yeah. I think this is, obviously relatively cool feature in that, you can basically just tell it what resources to scan from that perspective. Like you said, you'll even do security groups, EC2 instances, things like that. But I feel like this is AWS is like they're releasing new things that are useful, but they're doing it in a very AWS way as well, where they can't help but release like 5 or 6 different products that still all kind of do the same thing. Like there's still there's still not a lot of clarity for me around when you would specifically go to this versus that.
Right. The security hub.
Yeah, exactly. Like why you couldn't remediate something with this versus with another product. Right. So there's the waters are still muddy, and this isn't really AWS's fault necessarily. This is a very complex topic sometimes, so sometimes it's necessary. But if you were relatively new to the industry, I would feel for you very much, because you would probably read these and be like, what the hell? These all do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's, the very, very small details built into this. A lot of them build out these kind of, maps, which are very useful, kind of mapping, this this service then talks to this and this. So, known exploits here and there, there's even severities, whether they're critical or, low priority, etc. But yeah, it's like all of it's still slightly confusing to me. But yeah, well, like you said, eventually we'll see if this gets used. If it doesn't, they'll axe it, and then we'll never see it again. But we'll see.
It's a very AWS thing. I feel like AWS. I think I've heard actually that the people at AWS are incentivized to, through their customer obsession, essentially create new services, like new things for their customers to use. And I feel like there's a little bit of there's also a little bit of shipping the org chart here, where
100%.
You know what I mean? Like these people are working on things, and the products that they're shipping essentially match the organization charts, meaning like, you're having these different orgs coming up with these different things. And anyway, so I think that's got to be part of why we have these, because you would think, what I would have thought is that you would take this functionality and just put it in this thing that the SOAR, the security hub that already has all of the other threat intelligence and feeds that are coming into it for surfacing of vulnerabilities. But yeah, so we will see. Time will tell on how this is differentiated. And it's also possible, I don't know, it depends on what's in here. Maybe there's just too much in here to put it in the other one. I don't know, right? I do feel like it's more about shipping the org chart in that case than about truly differentiated services. And then there's one more on top of this that's to point out, which is the hold on, I just had the IAM Access Analyzer. So this one is very similar to the others, except it's focused on IAM. And it does exactly what you think it would do. It goes through all of your IAM roles, resources, and surfaces overly permissive IAM access, right? So, I mean, I know there are entire products, third-party products that do this, that are probably going to be, unless they're multi-cloud products, which they probably are going to be in trouble. But yeah, so there's not a lot to say about the IAM Access Analyzer. It's pretty short, actually. But the idea is go find overly permissive guidelines or go overly permissive access, rather, surface it, and then remediate it. It's pretty short and sweet, actually.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's a lot of products that exist out there that do this today. So this is, potentially going to majorly impact those that are using those services, in that, under the assumption that AWS can do this any better. To your point, the products out there that probably do this from a third-party perspective are probably multi-cloud, and their consumers are probably multi-cloud. Yeah. So switching whole hog to this is not really an option. But that's the thing. That's the problem with being multi-cloud, right? The organization is going to automatically determine what level of complexity and number of tools that they are willing to use to get the same job done in different environments, right? So I mean, looking at the pricing, I'll be honest, I don't know how their competitors would typically price this stuff out, but it seems like AWS charges not based on the IAM roles, but based on the resources.
The ones they're looking at,
Yeah, so this could, I mean, I guess you're going to have way more IAM roles. I don't know, actually. That's a good question. I don't know if typically customers would have more IAM roles or more resources. I can honestly think of examples where it would be, one or the other. Like I know customers that have built millions of IAM roles, where you'd probably want a product like this to clean all this shit up. And I also know companies that have, done very strict IAM roles that are not, kind of bountiful in quantity, I should say. So I guess it depends. But yeah, I mean, if you're single cloud AWS, I don't see why you wouldn't use this. It seems relatively cheap to do. So yeah, it seems like a bit like a no-brainer. Another thing that kind of surprised it took this long to come to the table, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. Let's do one more. Let's see. Which one was it? So yeah, let's do one more. So there's a new one about oh gosh, sorry, I got them all mixed up on my screen here. Certificate manager. So Amazon now has expanded ACM certificate managers so that you can export. Finally, I honestly didn't. I'll be completely honest. I don't use ACM very much, and I didn't realize you couldn't do this before. But now you have the ability to actually export your certificates from ACM for use in other locations, right? On-prem, other clouds, wherever you would need the ability to leverage that certificate. Before I guess you could only do it for AWS resources. Big deal, I would think. Like. Because I always thought you could do that. So so this is, I wonder what we were doing before. Actually, now I'm kind of scratching my head. Like, I guess you were using Certificate Manager to manage certificates you already had generated elsewhere. And then you were only generating from ACM for AWS resources, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, there's benefit to both sides of this, right? Like with ACM being kind of this holistic service in AWS that just does all certificate management, there's a lot of things that are completely embedded in there that you don't have to worry about from the customer's perspective. But that comes at a price in that you can't use it with external resources, right? There's some kind of dependencies built into there. So this does also kind of introduce some new kind of, I don't want to say new things to certificate management, maybe new things to certificate manager or ACM within AWS, in that focusing on, kind of things like revocation, revoking certificates, whereas it's not all contained within AWS at that time, and kind of the renewal of those certificates as well. I don't know if you could actually revoke certificates specifically previously to this. So I don't know if that's a new thing that's been added. I know you can automatically renew them in ACM, but I don't remember being able to explicitly revoke them. I could be just completely misremembering that. But yes, I mean, this note here does say you can only revoke certificates that were previously exported. So it leads me to believe that this is a new thing. But like you said, now this is adding an amount of complexity that wasn't there before. It hasn't been there for the last 15 years at this point. Yeah. So I'm sure some people are sighing a breath of relief until the day comes when they have to, something gets compromised and they do have to revoke these. And I don't know how that fits into their existing workflows, et cetera. So yeah, so it's good, but comes at a price of your sanity potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I assume basically organizations that needed this capability elsewhere simply didn't use ACM for their certificate management, right? Outside of resources that are completely within AWS and stay and don't need essentially to do certificate management for other outside entities.
A lot of customers I saw, it was completely mixed bag, right? They would do some stuff in ACM, some outside of it, and to be honest, I bet they are the ones that are quite happy with this because it was a nightmare. But I mean, I don't know. A lot of customers use their own private CA as well, so it's I'd be interested to hear who's if this is going to change anyone's workflow, to be honest, or how they do certificate management.
Yeah, or make it easier, make it harder. Yeah, good call. Okay, well, let's go ahead and cut it there. I think we got a good bit of information out there. Yeah, any last thoughts? We good?
No last thoughts. I think this was good. Like I said, it still felt very much like a AWS conference to me, in that it had a little bit of magic sprinkled on everything that you can't help be a bit cynical about. But overall, it's awesome. Like it kind of sucks when all the announcements are really focused on analysis and things like that, and nothing actually changing the forefront of how the technology works. But sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles, right? So overall, I thought it was good.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, if I was a company third party with a moat, I'd be looking at my moat, based on some of the stuff that's been announced recently.
Yeah, I do wonder if some of these things came on the tail end, or potentially some kind of premonitions that AWS knew ahead of time about the Wiz acquisition, things
Google
like that. So the writing might be on the wall.
That's a very good point, actually, because a lot of these capabilities are CSPM capabilities, which of course Wiz, Wiz also does runtime security, which we haven't really seen. Like there wasn't a runtime security announcement at AWS, but yeah, I mean the CSPM side of it, hardcore, yeah, definitely. All right, guys. All right, well, this has been Cables to Cloud's Fortnightly News. Thanks for joining us. The stuff will be in the show notes. Encourage you to take a look. See you next time.